So yours, like, it's called factoring, and it
Yeah.
is like the cocaine of business. And I think you and I talked about that
Yeah,
too.
we did talk about it.
We never got off it. It's supposed to be like an 18-month bridge deal till you kind of normalize your growth. I mean, we calculated, I think it was $5.5 or $6 million of hard fees we paid the bank. So this is where the bank was making 700 grand plus off of us each year.
Did the two of you figure out this is the plan? I mean, you talked about
No
kind of
way.
chaos going on. Is it okay? Here's where we at. Here's the plan. How
No,
does this unfold?
$240,000 of payroll every other week. That was the plan. It's just job versus asset. Private equity has been doing this forever. And so there's this ownership framework that has to say, okay, like, you have a job, you have an asset. And this goes back to the time. What do you want out of your time? What do you need out of the cash flow without labor?
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My guest today is Ryan Tansom. Ryan has successfully turned around the family business and ultimately scaled and exited that business. And today we're going to have a conversation about what he went through in terms of turning that business around and where he's at right now, helping business leaders and CEOs to shift their mindset from CEO to owner. Have I got it right, Ryan? And welcome to the show.
You got it, June. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad you're having fun doing this. Your story and your guests, it's going to be fun to watch the podcast take off.
Yeah, it's kind of early days, and I'm on the other side of the table from you. And having listened to you, I mean, you're part of my morning kind of weekly routine for months and months, and yeah, since Small Giants, since we met at Small Giants. So
it's awesome.
Really looking forward to your podcast coming back, and
I'm excited too as well.
I guess I'm kind of curious as well. We had this conversation a little while ago, or a few days ago. What does freedom mean to you?
It's interesting because Google doesn't like that word, and there's probably a lot to unpack in even that statement. But I landed on the word independence, which is funny because in America with the Independence Day, like what the hell does that mean? And June, what we're really thinking back, and this really goes back to my childhood, is like, I need independence over my time. So freedom actually means independence over my time, where like, I just want to be able to, like, and I don't say this in any like negative way, but I just want to be able to do whatever I want every day. And it's sovereignty, right? Like I don't want anybody. I remember being like, wait, I have to do all this stuff I don't want to do. Oh, you have to do that to make money. Okay. But why do we need money? We'll do buy the things that we need. Okay. But like, when does that stop? It's like, oh, never. It's like, well, no. It like broke my brain. And so freedom just means to me independence over my time. And I have this thing called the independence of time wheel in my material. And I want to be able to talk to who I want to talk to every day.
Yeah.
Doing the activities that I enjoy, that I'm good at, talking about the topics that I enjoy, and then having a purpose that's bigger and beyond myself. So like being able to, float in and out of those different things. I need the money and the cash flow and equity to do that. But does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I guess it's how you sort of find that balance or reconcile those two things. Having the freedom or the independence to do what you want to do. And you're almost at the kind of outset again. You're starting something pretty new. Again, it's evolved over time, but how are you thinking about that freedom, that independence in terms of intention and where you're going? And how do you kind of
it's just a time and money. Like money is a store of time. So like you and I both wake up and we do things for people. Hopefully we're providing value to people, and everybody listening and does it too. And you take that value and you store it in something that hopefully doesn't get debased by central governments. Won't go into that, but like, I mean, that's real, but that's, I mean, no joke, but yes, like the reality is you store your time into hopefully something that doesn't degrade. And so like we exert time and energy every day, and we need to store that. And so like, what's the trade-off? And it's like, well, like, time is literally just the ability to do whatever you want, but then we need to store it in money. But money buys us the freedom to have that time. So the trade-off that I see is this trade-off of more money today more cash flow versus more equity later. Okay, well,
Yeah.
how does that impact your independence of time? So it's like, okay, well, if I generate a lot of income today, what am I going to do with that? Do I buy random stuff that I don't need so that way I can so I say this because like so many people get, I mean, this is the proverbial rat race, right? June, it's like, okay, well, so as it relates to a business, it's like, okay, for me, what I'm doing now, and I think this will more directly answer your question. And then and this ties into the family business too, is like, so I had a family business that did 20 million in revenue and we had a big infrastructure, right? So like that was a lot easier to turn around. There's more cash flow, more equity. But then like over the last 10 years, June, I had 3 different companies that I bootstrapped. Well, guess what? You don't make any money for a long time.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sucks. And it's like, well, this could be worth something in the future, but it's like I got kids and I'm like, so there's this balance of slow down the growth, have different targets where that I can make, hundreds of thousands of dollars this year, but then I can't take that money and then hire the people, do the systems and all like, so what's the trade-off of like 5 million in equity in 5 years versus 250 grand a day? That's kind of like what I like to use as the trade-offs. And so then I think that helps us then say, okay, then what kind of life do we want? And so back on my last business, what I personally did is I said, you know what? I could be worth millions of dollars in equity in the handful of years. And I could make a decent income on the way there. Not what I really would love, but and I don't want the job that it takes.
Yeah.
So I took the time, which is the job, and then the income and the equity as a framework to say, do I want to sign up for this journey?
So you're kind of trying to figure out the balance between these 3 things. This is what I want in terms of the time. This is what I want in terms
In
of
equity and
an
cash flow.
equity and cash flow. And you're trying to balance these 3 elements
Yeah.
to suit your life
Yeah. Yeah.
and being
Because
far more intentional about that. Yeah.
there's no amount of money that you could pay me to talk about cost per copy and copiers ever again. like I did it. I don't want and another thing is I got offered I don't know, it was $300,000-$400,000 10 years ago, a salary plus equity to do hard money lending. And I just
Good.
felt gross about it. I was like, no, thank you. And so it was like, okay, equity, cash flow, what's the time and what's the job? So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I'm guessing that as you kind of go through iterations with different businesses, you're becoming more and more intentional about how you do that and where you're going and how you're thinking about that and how you design your business.
100%. So what I'm doing now, I don't want a 7-figure payroll anymore. I learned that the hard way, and I don't want to bootstrap.
Yeah.
And so for now, I like how I start is I actually started with my business every single week and every single month. What do I want to be doing with my time? I want to be spending time with you,
Yeah.
and I don't want anybody to tell me that
I
I can't.
appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I look at my week and I say, okay, well, how many client calls do I want? How many group calls do I want? How many podcasts do I want? Can I take my kids to school and pick them up? And you've ever heard the whole rocks, pebbles, sand,
Yeah.
water thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I do that with my time first and then say, how can I make the income that I need with the priorities of time?
I
And then
love
what
it.
kind of
Yeah.
equity will that create? And if I can't create the equity that I need with doing the time, so there's just it's just a framework to think about it. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's just more about the journey of life is figuring out what you want. And again, I went from a big infrastructure to then bootstrapping startups.
Yeah.
No, thank you. To then kind of an in between where I think that my current company that I'm building with that time, I can generate a lot of cash flow and a significant cash flow and be lean and mean. And then I'm gonna have to figure out how to store that value in other things. Instead
Yeah.
of having to have this business be worth $5 million, it's a choice. I talk a lot about building a financial asset, but you don't have to. There was an executive recruiter that came through my program years ago, doing $2.5 million in revenue. I don't know what his normalized EBITDA or net income was, but he went through the program, and he's like, what my big takeaway is? I'm not going to create an asset. I was like, good
So
for you. You
he
know what that
actually
you know what
walked
that means?
away saying,
Yeah,
"What? Yeah, that's not the
yeah.
route I want to take." Good. Yeah.
Yeah, because guess what? Otherwise, you go into these peer groups and everybody's like, grow, ERP systems, HubSpot, sales and marketing, hire the people. And he's like, nope, I'm going to net 600K a year. I got 7 employees. We're all going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's going to have all this net income. Well, not even just net income, but after taxes, the cash. And he's going to
Yeah.
invest that in other things. So instead of like, I call it June purgatory, where it's like the worst thing that I see people do is they do the tweener, which is like, okay, he takes that cash flow, puts it into random shit for years. He has no savings or like minimal savings, he or she, the
Yeah.
hypothetical he or
Yeah.
she, and then the company is worth $1 million and they need it to be worth 5. It's like,
And they're
well, how well
just
did that go?
sitting in this kind of, I think it was a great,
Purgatory. Yeah.
yeah, great book called No Man's Land some years ago, Doug Tatum
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
I got it
But
back
like,
there. Yep.
yeah, like making that decision to cross no man's land, and most businesses just get kind of stuck somewhere there, which is, as you put it, purgatory,
Yeah,
stuck in the middle.
and then it's like all these metrics that us business owners and entrepreneurs judge each other on, like revenue and net income. Well, neither of those have any, like those aren't the two valuation metrics. So like, why are we paying
Yeah.
attention to that? And net income is the tax game. It doesn't tell me the story of business. So it's like it just becomes the blind leading the blind, and like it just depends on what you want.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like yeah, I got so many stories, so I could keep going. So
So let's go
uh,
back a bit then. So
yeah,
you, well, your father starts a business in the late 90s, mortgages the house, fills up a truck with secondhand copiers,
copiers.
and
Yep.
he's your age at the time, 37 or
Mm-hmm.
so. Starts this business, and fast forward what, 10 years or so, and 12 years, and you join the business. You come out of college, and you go
Mm-hmm.
straight into the business. What's the situation? What happens when
Well,
you
first of
get it?
all, yeah, he barely graduated high school. He was doing like credit card machines and calling cards and all that stuff, landing on copiers, and there was a ton of money shooting back in that. Like he was selling stuff at 200% margin back in the day, and so, but like where I got addicted to business is I sat there. So it was the early '90s that he did this because I mean he had like www.imagingpath.com on cars. Like, someone's going to
Yeah.
stop and like you pull out their Blackberry and like, yeah, exactly right.
At least nowadays we've got the QR codes.
Exactly. But at 9 o'clock he'd come home because we had one boy. And I
Yeah.
think most of the inventory he bought was actually junk. So he bought he bought a bunch of stuff that he had to like trash. But at 9 o'clock he'd come home and I'd sit there and just ask him how it went that day. And that, I think about Jack Stack and like the great game of business. It's like it's a game. So like listening to him on how he grew that business and the risks that he took was crazy. And that like, I mean, he barely graduated high school and he always said to me, June, because I was the first person to go to college out of my both sides of my family, I believe. Anyways, yeah, like
Yeah.
parents didn't. And but it's just like, I don't know, man. Like you need the piece of paper these days, but as long as you can sell and provide value to people, you'll be just fine. Go get the piece of paper. And I was like, okay. And so that was like essentially just, bees get degrees. And so I watched him just grow the company. I started selling copiers and like doing interns. I mean, I did meter reads back in the day before they were plugged in and all this stuff. Doing like the
Yeah, I remember you
family or
would
the
have had to
biz.
count on the machine, and you'd have to go to
Yeah, so I'd have
the
to call you
customer
up and be like, all right,
like,
June, like, hey, by the way, what's your new meter read? And people would
so we
hang
can
up
send
on
you
me.
an
And I'm like,
invoice.
well, I need it to bill you. So like you inconvenience someone's day to get them to walk to the copier to tell them the thing that they then get billed for. It's like they're not like, pumped about that.
Yeah.
So I did all the stuff. I mean, moved the locations as he grew because in 10 years he went from 0 to 21 million, 115 employees. I mean, my dad was a machine of a sales guy. And so like did a lot of different things. I swore like, I mean, I did copier interns. Like I was cold calling and stuff like that at 19, drowning in a suit. And so I did a lot of the like a high exposure and then all the company parties every year and all the family hunting trips and all that stuff were all commingled in with the business. So in 2009, June, like there's no one getting jobs. So I graduated college and I'm like, all right, well, like all my super smart friends with like accounting degrees and all these things. And I'm like, I don't know. I got a business degree, but I know how SWOT analysis worked. Sweet. And I
Yeah.
drank really well. And so like, so I had like 14 sales jobs offered up because I'm willing to work for $1,000 a month. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go sell.
I'll go
I
sell
didn't even
something.
know there
I
was
got
a.
my
I
piece of
didn't
paper.
even
I can
know
go
there was a
sell.
recession. Yeah, like it's just like I don't know. I'm gonna go sell to make my income. Like that's what I always expected, and like not a lot of people. That's not. I didn't realize how rare that was. Anyways, long story short, my dad's GM at the time calls me up, and we later had major issues with him. But my dad had been very distant, June, from the company. He was going through a bunch of personal stuff, a divorce with my mom. We ended up trying to buy out a silent partner. I mean, like you name the crap I went through. But I got a call from the GM and it was, hey, come work for us. And I'm like, I don't want to sell copiers. They're not technology, by the way. Cause like I'm young and you are old and like this thing duplicates. I'm aware. Like it's like, I mean, like literally, like our logo, June, was a colored rainbow. And it wasn't because of gay pride. It was because we wanted to show everybody we print in color. It's like, this is ridiculous.
We got color copies. And by the way, the margin's 200 and something percent.
Oh, it's so funny. Like we had 26 vehicles that had like rainbows on them. I mean, it's just hilarious. And so, oh God. So he calls me up and he's like, right, the GM, he's like, hey, Ryan, we're not box salespeople anymore. We're solution salespeople. I'm like, oh, okay. And if Rob Dubé listens in, he's gonna just
Tell me
get a
more.
kick out of this shit. And so he's like, managed print services. It's a solution. You have to understand where people's documents are coming from, and then we'll help them build workflows and all this stuff, and then they'll buy copiers. I'm like, oh. So, anyways, I get suckered into starting. And then I'm like the specialist, June. And so I started in June of 09, realized that it was a complete bait and switch. Like, oh, wait, I'm still just selling copiers. So, oh God. So I start in the bullpen. And like as the owner's son, and my dad was a crazy person back then. I love him to death. Like we're best friends, man.
Yeah.
And like it's either be the entitled prick everybody thinks you're going to be, or work twice as hard to earn just a little bit of respect. And like the good news about sales is there's no lies. Like there's no like, what is he doing? You're either putting up the sales numbers or not. So it was the 400 phone calls, 15 appointments, 7 net news, 5 proposals, 3 closes, $40,000 a month in revenue, no matter what.
And you're just doing those laps. Leads,
Over,
appointments,
yeah. I mean,
proposal, sale, leads, appointments, proposal.
oh, dude, yeah, I mean, like it, like honestly, like for whatever it's worth, I had like, and we'll get into kind of the turnaround too, but
Yeah.
there was this between June 1st of 2009 where no one had jobs, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know, I'm making $1,000 a month, go sell shit, and so I started doing the phone calls, and like, I get a territory, I get the zip codes, I get the CRM that's full of garbage from the guy that quit, and I'm just like, all right. So like, yeah, 22 years old, and then I just start making the phone calls. Well, the quota that year, or the quota for reps, was 300 grand a year. I sold $295,000 worth of copiers, or $294,000 within 6 months. And I didn't. So think about this. You would think that they would equalize the quota, right? And
Yeah.
I could get to go to President's Club.
No.
They didn't. No, I was like, wait a second. I like beat 98% of the people in the bullpen. There was 24 people, and like, but I didn't hit 300 grand, so I didn't qualify for President's Club. I'm like, this is a bunch of shit.
And it's in 6 months and it's 5K.
Yeah, 5.5 months essentially. I ended up making so much money in copiers the first year and a half of my career. Like I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars, while my buddies are making like $14 an hour. And I'm like, I don't know. I was making, my base pay is $1,000, but all of this, like I joke around, all of this changes because in December of 09, the one thing I mean, like, there's so much I'm grateful for, Jean, is that um the my dad like was very distant from the company. We had a GM run it. It was a toxic place, honestly. Like, I mean, like, go ahead.
I was going. Did he kind of have one foot out of the door already because of what was going on, or was he already on his way out? And
Well, it depends on like what we mean as on your way out. And I think that there's probably a lot of listeners that can resonate with that. Is like he was probably making 400 to 800 grand in cash flow
yeah,
on 20 million. I mean, like it's a lifestyle business.
yeah,
So like you didn't have to run the business. He had a GM running the business who like he had there was 110 people. I mean, there was no org chart, by the way, for 110 people, like when I started, and there was no EOS. So like you talk about like jumping in, it's like everybody's doing random things and somehow copiers get delivered and fixed every day. I mean, it was not, I mean, I'll rate it a B minus or a C for
yeah.
operations, maybe a little bit lower, but so like he came in and stuff like that. He was dealing with the bank and the big customers and all, like, I mean, minimal work, right? Like managing like the GM and the top sales rep, but like it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle business where it's focused on revenue and the K1.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people resonate with that, which is like this thing is supposed like the reason he started it was the same reason that I said I like independence. It's like he barely graduated White Bear High School and he just didn't want anybody to tell him what to do. And next thing you know, he's got 115 employees and he's got a $240,000 payroll every 2 weeks, $1.5 million in inventory, $1.8 million in payables, $1.8 million in receivables. I mean, next thing you know, you're like, what is this thing? Like, I just want to go to the cabin.
And it's just feed the monster, feed the
Yeah,
monster.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked a little bit about purgatory earlier. Did he kind of have that feeling that he was sitting in purgatory, or was he just kind of comfortable? It turned into a lifestyle business.
We didn't know, and this is where like very good question, June, because where there's usually a reckoning that happens where it all is fine until it's not, because there's a mismatch of expectations, and unless someone knows there's a mismatch of expectations, and if this is reality for everybody that's listening, I've kind of got my two different hands up, and there's a gap of reality and expectations. That's resentment and unhappiness. And I just want to have alignment of reality and expectations. And what happened is usually people get out of the blue offers or something happens and they need to do something different. And then they realize, holy crap, what is this thing worth? You and I talked about that on my
Yeah.
show. Like, what's this worth? What is my lifestyle? And then they realize that they're actually trapped in this machine that it provides cash flow. So how we figure that out, June, is that so my dad pulled me in all the bank and the CPA meetings. So even though I was a sales rep, he would pull me into he's like, I don't know, I figured this out. Like so I'm 22 years old sitting there with the CPA in the bank and my dad. And in December of 2009, we find out we lose $940,000 on a 21 million in revenue. And then all of a sudden the bank's under an FDIC covenant because they have a bunch of crap loans from the real estate. And they want to pull our line, but they can't because they're making so much in fees off of us. So we were too big to fail. And it was just like this whole like mindset shift of like, what the hell? Like, what is this thing? And that's when we realized we were living off of cash flow. We did not have any. I mean, you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
You got your same situation where it's like, great, we have all this cash flow that my dad was sucking out of the company for his lifestyle. Well, our ERP system is junk. Like the thing wasn't worth it. Like, I mean, it was worth. We had a unique business model because on 20 million in revenue, 11 million is bank finance contracts. So from what my dad always said to me, he's like, you know what? These bankers and these finance people don't know what the hell they're talking about. We could always fire 60% of these people, keep the technicians, and make a shit pile of money for the next 48 months.
Just out of that.
Like, it's not really what we want to do. But at the end of the day, like, he's right. I mean, like, there's contracts. Like, as long as we were servicing those contracts, we could have had a skeleton crew. Not what we chose to do. But then all of a sudden, we got to reinvest to turn everything around. And then that gobbles up cash flow. Well, what's the reinvestment for? Well, hopefully to have value. Well, why are you doing this? And like that, so that kind of just snowballed into duct tape and spit and glue trying to figure things out.
So what happens? You then at this point where you realize that there's this massive loss of what was it, 941,000?
40. Yep. Oh, by the way, we hit the Inc. 5000, the Fast 50. Woo!
Same year, was it?
Like we got 115 employees, 21 million in revenue, Inc. 5000. Yay, everybody! And by the way, if we would have sold June, if we would have sold the business, we'd have owed the bank a couple $1 million. So like who cares? You're better off with a job than all that crap.
Yeah, it's kind of like a noose around your neck, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and with no purpose other than the fact that like it's like a noose around your neck while you're eating cookies. So like you think you're free, and like you're like, wait a second, I'm like sitting on a chair, and like if I move, go to the bathroom,
It's over.
I'm screwed.
So you get to this point. Did you at all think, okay, I'm out of here, or was it just okay? We got to go through this, or how were you feeling? How are you thinking at that time?
It was the next 5.5 years, the most emotional years of my life. We had $240,000 in payroll every 2 weeks. it like became the sacred cow. You never miss that. So like when you say
Yeah.
like, what's the game? The game is never miss that. And then like, then it's on top of that, it's receivables and payables to make sure our customers are fine in the inventory. And I
Partners.
never
Yeah.
knew that was called working capital, but like you have to pay payroll and you have to do what you said you were going to do to your customers. And what's even more complicated is that we had no line of credit really because we were financing our receivables. And my dad, because he grew so fast in the early 2000s, so yours, like, it's called factoring, and it
Yeah.
is like the cocaine of business. And I think you and I talked about that
Yeah. We
too.
did talk about it.
He never got off it. It's supposed to be like an 18-month bridge deal till you kind of normalize your growth. I mean, we calculated, I think it was $5.5 or $6 million of hard fees we paid the bank. So this is where the bank was making 700 grand plus off of us each year. So
Sure.
they could, because they couldn't kick us out because they needed the cash flow, but then they didn't want to factor anymore. So there was literally this like standoff of like,
So what was it
who's going to
about?
cancel who's going to cancel who
14%.
first?
Yeah. What were you at? About
I think all
14%?
effective the cost of capital is like 27%,
27. Yeah.
honestly.
Geez.
I mean, that wasn't like
Yeah.
that was like it was like 14%, but then like honestly, out of 115 people, I want to say 25% of everybody's time was juggling cash flow between payables, receivables, vendors, inventory, and like, and the moment you stop selling, the moment the company can't get funded. So like I have done insane, like I always say, if you want to go through your vendors from 30 days to 90 days and have everybody smiling, I'm your guy. like, I'm like, and they're gonna do it. It's like, oh, this is a good deal. And I'm like, and by the way, like we're driving to Fargo to get the purchase agreement, and we're gonna take a picture of that. We're sending it to the bank because we need the money tomorrow morning for payroll.
God, I've been there. I know that as well.
And then like, I know. It's
Walk
like,
it
oh,
through, walk it through, get a photo, send it to the bank.
yeah, get a photo. By the way, there was a book my dad sent me or gave me, and it said why SOBs succeed in business and nice people don't. And like there was this one where it's like if you want to buy yourself, like, oh my god, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but like if you want to give yourself a couple extra days of cash flow, one is don't sign all your checks that go out. Because then they all come back. They buy
We
so
got
like
you checked, but it
500.
wasn't.
Oh no way! You didn't get the or like my there was one where my CFO he went through a business that was like this and he's like just put a little bit of tape on the stamp and it gets caught in the sorter in the mailroom. It's just like, oh my god! You take the picture and you send like it's coming, June. It's coming. I promise. And like all this while trying to be hold your integrity and all this. So that's like the mechanics of the cash flow stuff, June. But like for me personally, it's like what other choice was there? Like my
Yeah.
dad built the life that I had. He paid for a third of my college. And like, do I just let him flounder and have my family have nothing? You think, I mean, at this point, like we had a cabin in Wisconsin, we had a condo in Florida. He had great stuff. I mean, I was broke growing up and all this like money and like stuff happened when I was like late high school,
Yeah.
college. So like I didn't get to experience any of this stuff, but I'm like, wait a second, like what choice do I have?
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't like, I mean, there was multiple times I tried to quit. I remember sitting in a park in Minneapolis, just bawling my eyes out because I felt so trapped. And like, and he was going through so much personal stuff too. So he was going through therapy. He was trying to, figure out how to, stay together with my mom. We were trying to buy out his silent partner who was screwing us. And like all of this while trying to make sure you hit the payroll. So like,
Yeah.
there's just no, like what I kept saying to myself is like, I was 27 when we sold. And I was effectively the integrator, whatever you want to call it, the GM, executive vice president, whatever. We just made titles up and gave people titles, which I think a lot of people do. But I was just like, I'm young, I'm eating glass. This is going to be valuable at some point in my life.
Yeah.
All my buddies and the economy was kind of recovering, and I'm like, and I always fell back and I can always sell. I don't know whether it's cardboard boxes or health insurance. I mean, like I'll be fine.
I
I
got
mean,
that
like
skill. I can do it.
yeah. And so like, I don't know,
Yeah.
man, like it doesn't negate the fact that I felt just unbelievably trapped and not wanting to do that stuff. But my dad felt trapped too.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It just, they're kind of like the family duty. It is what it is.
So did the two of you figure out this is the plan? I mean, you talked about
No
kind of
way.
chaos going on. Is it okay? Here's where we at. Here's the plan.
No,
how does this
$240,000 of payroll every other week. That was the plan. Meet that.
That's it.
I mean, if my dad was sitting in here and I would tell this story. So I say this because like him and I have so many freaking laughs about this now. I mean, I'm like, so I end up like, I honestly, I have so many stories. It's paralyzing. Like, we ended up getting this new ERP system called eAutomate. Robin, Joe will know what I'm talking about. and like, and like, like the biggest dealer in the country is Gordon Flesh is implementing it at the same time. So we got like the D minus team of the ERP implementation. So they're just a bunch of idiots. And so we ended up hiring this woman who we make our COO, like moving her to Minnesota, like convincing her. It was like hell and high water. I mean, she was a rock star. So she's in one of our management meetings, and my dad, like I'm kind of running the quasi running the management team. He swings in, like says things. She starts crying. He gets in his car and goes to the cabin. And I'm just like, what the hell, dude? And like I need to spend 2 days making sure she doesn't quit. And so we talk about the plan, and then like the next week he drives in his Maserati that he buys. And I'm like, dude, our payables are at 90 days. Like, what is this saying to the employees? And he's like, well, I needed to get my car fixed. Like, I'm just like, can you believe you did that? He's like, no, I can't believe I did that. So like, there was no plan. It's this weird, like, he deserves a good life because of how much value he created and how much hard work he has done. But then the business wasn't providing for the ownership, the lifestyle that he needed. So like there's this weird mismatch
Yeah.
of like the operational machine that is sucking the life and cash out of everything compared to what the ownership needs. And so like June, like we were like, I would say we had none of this stuff that I now do and teach on the ownership framework, but like what it was revenue, and we need to keep winning deals. So like we built out, so I'll give you the cliff note and then I'll let you take me wherever you want. But like operationally, what I did over the next 5 years, and I say we, whatever it is like, we need data. Well, we need to put a new ERP system in. Well, that sucks. Well, it's 300 grand. Well, we don't have any cash. Well, we got to do it anyways. How do we finance it? And so it was like all of the operational things we did over 5+ years was like bootstrapping, figuring out how to juggle the money, but it was new ERP system. So we could actually see the data and be answering the bank questions. Sold 2 branches for cash. New fleet of vehicles. I built out the managed IT service offering, the software automation. So like, again, if we got to keep selling, I had to keep winning deals. Well, no one's buying copiers anymore unless it's a like lower monthly price. So I'd have to build out like the solution sales reps and saying, okay, well, if we're going to go win a deal, we have to be the full technology provider, just like all the other players in the play,
Yeah.
hosted IT services, data. And so like, I'd say the funnest deal we closed was the Minnesota Wild, where everything was bundled in on a price per user on a 60-month bank finance contract. It was a multi-million-dollar deal where it's equipment, people in this print center, co-managed help desk, data hosting, software automation, all the equipment. It was like, hey, June starts. How much is he? How much is he per month? And then we just make an addendum. So like we had to do that in order to keep winning business, so we could keep funding the company and keep turning around, and just hopes that it was all going to work out at some point.
So there's no plan. But you can see that there's certain things that
You just got to
absolutely
do to
have to
keep selling.
get
Yeah.
done to keep the business moving in the right direction. And then, like, Ryan, do you start thinking, well, we got to sell this thing? When does that start kind of coming into your thought process?
I think because it's been so long now, like what ended up happening, June, is that so our bank, I watched my dad throw the keys at the bank in a meeting. He's like, F it. You can collect the receivables better than I can, apparently. And they were like, because we asked for a $300,000 bridge loan because we had a cyclical business, and they just slid I mean, you talk about like, this is where I realized that knowledge is power, and the power dynamics has to do with leverage and understanding where your leverage is at. My dad just slapped his cojones on the table. He's like, here's, go for it. And he just stared at him, and they just slid the keys back over. And it's like, and
Called
it's
your
like,
bluff.
apparently you can collect $1.8 million in receivables better than I can. And so we needed a bridge loan. Well, what happened was, they, like I said, it was a 5-year run to who can get more healthy.
Yeah.
And so what happens is like it was a nonstop fight every 2 weeks. And this is why probably gives you some insight why I care so much about finance, because those SOBs controlled our life. And I'm like, you're going to put us out of business, 100 families, because you guys suck. And like, we
Yeah.
have a good business here. We couldn't refinance our SBA loan because they sold it and they were servicing it. We couldn't get new financing because they were under an FDIC covenant. I interviewed 17 banks, June, over the course of 24 months, but everybody was puckered up because of the financial crisis. So like, all the financiers got fined, but like all that shit ran downhill. And
Yeah.
here we are sitting on 11 million in revenue on contracts that are 50% margin, and then 8 million on very small margins, but like a really good business, like 7-figure cash flow and wrong financing.
Yeah.
And the bank wouldn't help us. 17 banks that I interviewed wouldn't help us. And like, I realized that most bankers are salespeople, don't know shit about business. And then they got the underwriters who don't know anything about business. And I like, you can tell like it's taken a lot of therapy. My 10-year therapy session, my business, to not be so resentful towards these people. And I realized it's just this machine we were part of this machine and what had happened. But like, we had a really good business and the bank sucked.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going like, this is not our fault anymore. Like, yeah, we didn't run the business correctly. We fixed everything, but like the financing sucked. And we got to this point. And so I think this is the first time I've said this on record now, actually, is so I run the business. I want the business, right? I want to buy the business. My dad doesn't even know anything about iPads, let alone IT services. And he's like, I just want my $400,000 a year or whatever it is. But like, we didn't understand all the stuff I teach, valuations or any of these things. And like, he had no confidence that I was going to keep growing because we had invested millions of dollars into the business. Growth is expensive. And he just
Yeah.
didn't understand how that was going to impact his income. And what was the tipping is over, like, honestly, it was probably 2012, 2013, I'm in every single month interviewing banks. My dad joined Vistage. We started looking at EOS, but like everybody just goes in and talks about revenue and operational problems. Nothing on the financing, the cash flow, like valuations. And so like it still was a cobbled together mess of advice. And talking to all these banks, and then I would like tell this amazing story of everything we've done. PowerPoints, whiteboard, and like prove it. Well, we didn't, back to the numbers. Like we had a good income statement. I built out good budgeting and all that stuff, but I still, it was a combination. We were victim to their crap lending abilities, all the banking
Yeah.
system, and like we deserved scrutiny.
Yeah. And so they're looking
You
at
know,
the balance sheet and they're saying, no chance, we're not doing anything.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
negative equity, and my
Yeah.
dad's like, "Well, we will fire 60 people and ride this into the ground."
Yeah.
And so, like the banking system, like commercial banks, had no idea what actual value, cash flow, and equity value were. And like, so there was just this whole, like, I just felt so alone. It was like, this is not supposed to be this hard. We have 100 families that we have. We have a really good business now. Yes, we had problems. We fixed them. Look at what we did over the course of 5 years. And
Yeah.
like, then it truly became a financing issue. And so then we're sitting there and Northeast Bank calls us up and is like, you're done. They needed to get rid of their factoring clients. So they had 28 when we first started this in 2009, and they got rid of everybody but us
And that's it. They get one out of
because
the blue from the,
they
yeah.
needed the 700 grand a year in fees. And so then um, what happened is then and by the way, the banker that we were working with was a great guy. And I say this because it doesn't really matter the bank. And like I say, I'm kind of hesitating, like, I'm sorry I said that name, but you know what the reality is like, this is just the banking system.
Yeah.
And like the FDIC came in, some guy was running the bank and he had no control. No one has any control. And
Yeah.
like,
It's
and so
just,
like,
as you said,
that's what
it's a
you just
machine.
realize, like,
It's
yeah,
just
just go
realized
to
it's a
Jay.
machine.
Yeah. Just go to Jay Powell and say, hey, can I have some more printing, please?
Yeah.
Or Janet Yellen, like, hey, please just give me some more. And so I say all this because they got so like they finally didn't need our 700K, and they said, you're done. You got 90 days. And June, we had out of the 17 banks, we had 3 that actually understood our business and actually got comfortable with it. I actually interviewed Jeff Campbell on my show. I just love the guy. Love the guy. And then there was another gentleman. They said, you have we want you as a banking client, but we need 90 days more of trending to get everybody on board.
So you've
And
only
we
got
had,
90 days and you,
And by the time we got that verbal, it was already 30 days in. So we were 60 days left. So I turned around and my dad and I pinned up 3 local competitors and sold the whole damn thing in 1 month.
And did the
And then
competitors know what was going on behind the scenes, or did you?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I said I've never
Yeah.
told the story, but it's been 10 years, and they've made and honestly, like they made their return, so.
Yeah.
And this is where I talk about, like, 2 of the competitors wanted to keep the infrastructure, keep me. One was an ESOP, and but it was a cash flow valuation, and the
Yeah.
cash flow valuation was still good. It wasn't negative equity anymore. Like, there was value there for my father, um, and but like it wasn't enough to make it worth the sale. So we picked the highest purchase price, which was almost double the other ones. And I had to fire 60 out of the 90 employees. They gutted everything that I did, and we did, I should say,
Yeah.
everything that we built. They wanted the copier contracts.
I
That's what they
remember
wanted.
seeing the photograph in your presentation at Small Giants in this empty office and kind of papers lying on the floor, and the
I
day
mean,
that you moved out.
it
And
was horrific, dude. I mean, like,
yeah.
we signed the paperwork July 1st, 2014. Went back and I called everybody in for an out of the blue all company meeting. Everybody knows what's up. I mean, technicians and salespeople. I mean, we only had 20 some people in the office, and tell them, like, yep, we sold to our competitor who we had. I mean, we had sued for non-competes and all this stuff for like 10, 15 years. Wait, we sold to them, and it was just this like weird thing where everybody then had to interview for their jobs. 34 out of the 90 people got jobs. Everybody else got fired. My dad and I mean, so we're sitting there in this 26,000 square foot building, just us two. And we're like, what the hell was that? My dad got an 8-figure wire to his checking account. You have to pay down your debt, pay off your taxes. He still made enough to retire. I made a good chunk of money for being in my mid 20s. And I went home and I bawled my face off.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like everything, like all the stuff that I did, the team, we had this amazing culture, like the Zappos Delivering Happiness culture,
Mm.
like a Tom Walter Tasty Catering culture. And it's not the buyer's fault. I actually, all the people, it was really cool. All the people that are I think everybody's still there, June. Like, and I got 10-year
Of those
notifications from
34
everybody.
that,
Yeah. Like the
yeah.
buyers. And like, I realized that for a while I was crabby with the buyer, but like, it's not the buyer's fault. That's what they bought it for. And so it's just all about this awareness of what is this ownership game and how to align the ownership game with like what you want. And I don't know, man. It's been, like I said, it's been a 10-year therapy session, which is why I started the podcast. Like, what the hell happened to me? And I read Bo's book after we sold. I'm like, wrong order to this.
Do you remember later on in Bo's, near the end, he talks about entrepreneurs going through that exit and not wanting to build something big again. So you come out of 21 million in revenue, 115 people who you're responsible for, having to meet payroll every 2 weeks. Has that kind of influenced your thinking in terms of what you want to be building now and keeping it
It
small? And
did. Um, it did. Where, I mean, if I like thinking back about this, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff, is I was 27 running a $20 million company.
yeah,
I got to make crazy change and like, I mean, the adrenaline June, that I had, like, have an idea, go in there, change. I mean, it was a fast paced, adrenaline driven, change oriented, like, and I mean, the buyer was great. Like, I had a job for 60 days. I went and I quit. I'm like, I'm professionally unemployable. And they're like, how come you quitting, Ryan? And I'm like, Neil, whose name's on the door?
yeah,
He's like, it's not mine. Like, and so what happened was that over the last 10 years, the 3 companies that I had bootstrapped. I mean, dude, I went from having 100 and some employees and like resources to like, I'm doing everything.
yeah. I
So
remember
for 3 different companies, I'm like just eating glass. And then I'm like, wait a second. There's not enough income because everybody else that I'm paying is making all the money and I'm not making any money. Oh, it's because the equity is like way down the road. And I'm like, this sucks. And so, like, I thought because of what I teach that I had to build the equity again and have like the proof that I did it. I've built a couple pretty decent businesses, or I mean, like, whatever the percentages are, like
yeah,
a couple of them have been over the 7 figures. It just sucked. It's like I could hit the growth rate in the fast 50 or whatever the hell it is. I'm like, but this is not fun for me. I'm not making enough money and I'm not enjoying the ride. And so it kind of goes back to the whole full circle. Like if I were to be plopped into a business, and which is now why I like my company or what with my ownership coaching and framework, like I can make the disproportionate leveraged change without having to have all that personal guarantees and all that stuff where I can help. Like
Mm,
why I love what I do is like someone that, 1,500 people have been through my material, the ripple effect, because they wake up and they direct resources and people and stuff like that. So I don't have to have the infrastructure anymore.
yeah.
I thought I did, to be honest, to prove to myself and to the world that I could do it. But now it's like, no, it goes back to what I had said earlier is what does everybody want for time and for cash flow and for equity? And then like, what's their choice, but just make it intentionally. Just don't be surprised. And I think back to, I think, what was it on Monday when we were talking about, about giving up, right?
Yes. Never give up.
Yeah. Never give up. But like, I think it's give up within context.
Yeah.
If giving up gets you to your goal faster, hell, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Instead of just pretending it's going to work out and it's never going to work out.
Yeah. See, you come to the end, the business is sold. One of the things that you said along the way is that you sort of looked at EOS, you looked at Vistage, and you saw a whole lot of holes and gaps with it. And I think in part that's probably led you to, and the 10 years of therapy has led to you to where you are today. What's the mission that you're on right now, and what the
Um,
framework that you're putting together?
if with the context of that whole story that everybody listening to, it's like, what could I have done differently?
Yeah.
And then I mean, I've just been like on this search for the root problem, the root cause. I mean, that's like, I mean, I don't know if it's the systems thinking from building out managed IT services and like kind of frameworks and systems that like, if a complex system works, you change one thing, though, like the second, third, fourth order effect could mess the whole thing up. So like I go back to what's the outcome? Well,
Yeah.
if the outcome is independence over time and sustainable cash flow and equity growth, like that's it. So like that has to be the goal. Well, what results in that? So the 10 years of therapy, the 400 podcasts, the 3 companies, like there's the independence by design ownership framework is what I found was the white space and the gap. And I didn't know this. And if I known it was this hard for 10 years, I probably wouldn't have done it. I would have gone and made a bunch of money doing something else. But it was this like, okay, exit planning, what's that? No one freaking knows what exit planning is. It's like, okay, well, why is that? Because we have jobs and we have assets. What are
Yeah.
you exit planning from? Private equity doesn't exit plan. They just buy things at a good value, grow them, and sell them in a tax advantage way. Like, so I think there's this whole like muddied up conundrum of stuff and concepts. And when I really broke it down, and there's a whole journey of figuring this out. Your
I was
question?
going to say, so you've got this, you mentioned this whole idea of exiting and exit plan, and there's a job and there's an asset, and
Yeah.
people aren't thinking about, what am I exiting from? Is it the job?
Yeah. Like I
Is it
don't
the
even like
asset
the
that?
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I started saying like, I want to, I
Yeah.
want to get out. Out of what? I'm so
Yeah.
sick and tired of that freaking question. Cause it's like, well, if you're making 200 grand, 250 grand as a CEO and you don't want to work anymore, but you still want 250 grand and keep your asset because you've got a good company. Like, let's just, and I just purely think it's a lack of education around this stuff. It's like your W-2 job is in the income statement,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if someone else is doing it, you still own the company.
Yeah.
And like, so let's go back to like with my dad and I, like, and I mean, I really built the framework that I think we could have used, which is my dad wanted 400K net.
Yes.
And he wanted confidence that he was going to get that, because if we would have taken our 3 statement model and shown projected mathematically all 3 of those statements in the future, what was our working capital, what's our distributions, what's our taxes, and can Corey Tansen make 35 grand a month net, no matter what I'm investing in and all the strategies and all that working capital. And if Corey just knows that he can jump on a monthly meeting, just like a private equity firm, say, Ryan, are we on track, off track? Is Ryan's comp plan tied to his cash flow equity goals and
Yeah.
working capital goals? He'd have gone to the cabin and left me alone.
Yeah.
Like, and then he should have had the right as an owner to jump on and say, Ryan, payables are at 90 days and I don't have enough for distributions. Get your shit figured out, get a new bank. Or so
So
like it's this job versus asset private equity has been doing this forever. And so there's this ownership framework that has to say, okay, like you have a job, you have an asset. And this goes back to the time. What do you want out of your time? What do you need out of the cash flow without labor?
Yeah.
Right? So then it's like, what do you need out of your time? What do you need? What do you want out of your time? What do you want out of your income? And then are you building enough equity, a store of value to protect that income and freedom of time? And so then if we decouple the asset and the job and look at this stuff, there's a way to then say ownership's goal is to drive operational decisions. So people jump into these EOS annual planning meetings, they make shit up. Let's do a new ERP system. Well, what if all of a sudden the owner doesn't have any cash flow anymore? Like, it's ridiculous. And so like we have to go in and say, okay, if the owner's goal is to go from 1 million in normalized EBITDA to 2 million in normalized EBITDA from 2024 to 2030, and they
Yeah.
want to go from a 5 multiple to a 6 multiple, so they're going to go from a $5 million valuation to a $12 million valuation. Okay. Hopefully there's no debt. So let's assume the debt is void and all that. Okay. Well, and if June, you want to make 300 grand every year in distributions on the way there as the owner while I run your company, every single strategic decision should be layered within that framework.
Yeah.
That's what private equity does.
So there's this mind shift that's got to happen, and that you're helping owners navigate through, which is almost going from asset ATM kind of thinking where, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's annual cash flow, 20 million in revenue in K1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To shifting to thinking about how am I going to shift to an ownership model where I'm taking a disbursement, not a salary anymore, and I view it as an asset and have somebody in there running it.
Yeah, and then 100%. Like this is what private equity does. They don't go raise the money and be like, I can't wait to have a job.
Yeah.
Like,
let me put somebody in there to run it.
Yeah, they sit in the high tower going, look at the discounted cash flow. I mean, like let's get our shit together, owner operators, and let's actually do the things that they're already doing. And like now think about it. It's like, okay, so let's say you then hire me at 250. So let's go, or 240, call it 20 grand a month while you're still making your 30 grand a month. And then I'm funding the $1 to $2 million in normalized EBITDA, and we're de-risking the cash flow. So that's how we're going to go from a 5 to a 6. And you get an out of the blue offer soon for your company. You're going to go, what do I think? Well, how does this impact my net worth?
Yeah.
How does this impact my cash flow? What is the risk of the industry? Well, in ESOP, I could do a partial ESOP or full ESOP, and based on my, estate plan, I could put the warrants into an irrevocable trust, and I could do half up front, and then I don't pay any taxes. What's the internal rate of return of an ESOP versus private equity? And what if I do private equity sales? Should I roll 10%, 100%? Like it's a capital allocation decision, not like, oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of my job in L10s. Like, it's just ridiculous.
There is this transition that owners have to go through to get to that point, and presumably there's some kind of plan that's got to be put in place to get them there. And is that what you're working on with them? Is it, how do we?
It's two components. It's education and then the playbook. So the Independence by Design ownership framework has got 3 steps. The first one is understand the game. Understand the game of business ownership. The second one is choose the game. Like, what game are you playing? Because you and I might be like the executive search who wants to have high income is playing the different game than the SaaS company. Like, we're not all playing the same game. So understand the game, choose the game, and then play the game. Playing the game is there's 2 steps in each of those. Understand the game is like, what do you want out of your time and your job? If you want to decouple yourself from the job, like, go for it. But no one can make these decisions besides the people listening in. Second part of understand the game is master the game, master the art of valuations. You have to understand this. If you and I were to trade something back and forth, we're going to understand the value of that. How do you trade your asset if you don't understand the value of it? If I wanted to come buy your house and you had no idea what it was worth, like, that's insane. So like, I talked to this guy, they're a client of mine, excavation business. It's like, do you know what your company's worth? No, 30 years. They just wake up and just hope to God it's worth something. Like, that's insane.
I feel like that's so common.
It is. So these are, because we're operators in L10s and org charts and EOS and all that. So like, those are the 2 factors of, understand the game, which is on mastering the ownership mindset and then mastering valuations. And to choose the game, clarify your ownership objectives. What's your cash flow and equity objectives, and what exit options for your ownership align with your goals? ESOP, private equity, family estate plan. Like that's ownership, different than your job. So like after step one, we've just shifted into an owner, and we're talking about assets here. And then in the second part of step two is like build an ownership team.
Yeah.
And these are advisors that understand this, not a bunch of, D players, but like whether it's tax, legal, wealth, the people that understand this stuff that aren't just clipping coupons on some diversified portfolio. And then the third step of the playing the game, ownership and leadership alignment, which is, June, if you know that you need $500,000 a year and the company, you have to pay your tax and the company has another 500 grand, like build your freaking budget and your strategic plan around that 500 grand constraint.
Yeah.
Right? Like don't, and like how are you then going to, how are the strategic plans and the rocks and the VTO of that 500 grand, how are they going to de-risk that cash flow by increasing the multiple? And how are they going to increase normalized EBITDA, which is cash flow? So you put in if it was, $50,000 for a new software, it's a normalized event, which is normalized EBITDA. And then it should de-risk the cash flow, which is increasing the multiple. And then most of these people that I'm working with, they're like, I just don't want a job anymore. And I would like the income, and then I would like choices to do whatever I want.
Yeah. Are they essentially ultimately going to two teams then? You've got your leadership team who's running the business, and you have your ownership team who are those experts that you talked about, the owners surrounding themselves with, the tax experts.
Yeah, here's how I'd put this is it's private equity and family office mindset.
Coming
These
together
people
on
are,
that same.
yeah, like run your company like a PE firm.
Yeah.
I don't want a job anymore. Like I want to do whatever I want every day. And like it's like make sure your leadership team and operations is marching you towards your ownership, cash flow, and equity goals. And if you want to jump in and do the design or whatever, like you should have the flexibility to work in your operations if you want to, but like you don't have to. And then the family offices mitigate taxes.
Yeah.
Don't overpay in taxes. Make sure your estate plan is put together. Make sure that if you're like gonna buy your building, if you're gonna do M&A, like this is private equity and family offices. I spent 10 years interviewing all these people, and I'm sitting here going, what they do is not that complicated. They just get this shit. And we're sitting here over there like, grinding away. And then we hand them this multi-million-dollar asset that in 4 years they double and sell to someone else. And they didn't do any of the work.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So basically find those people, surround yourself with those people early on and figure this thing out.
Yeah, because like if you think about it, if you told me like, hey, Ryan, I want to go from $1 million in normalized EBITDA to 2. I want to go from a 5 multiple to 6. And here's like, okay, June, how are we going to do that? Well, we need to make sure that we are mitigating taxes. You have like your estate plan, all this stuff is lined up. Does a banker understand your plan? Yeah. If M&A is part of your plan, and like, are they capable of funding your line of credit and your working capital based on your growth plan? Or are you going to have to go beg for it up? You know what I mean? Like enough of the people that just don't get it, and you just flip the power dynamics. And I think you and I were talking on Monday. It's like, the American healthcare system is a dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. Like it is the worst pile of crap ever. You might find someone that could fix one specific thing, but if you're looking to dumpster fire as in the general health, like if you go and say, I'm kind of like, I'm not feeling good. Well, do you need a fuse back? Would you like some Oxycontin? It's like, so that's the business advice world. It's like, unless you know what you need, you're most likely going to stumble either into a hornet's nest, or you might accidentally get what you need, but you're not doing it intentionally.
Yeah. I think I remember you talking about this, about these different silos and the different pieces of advice. And so being intentional and actually knowing what you want and making sure I get you.
Well, a friend of mine is an M&A attorney, he does a bunch of deals. He's like, it's not my job to make sure they're financially free. It's like, get the deal done.
Yeah.
The CPA's job is like, make sure the quality of earnings is fine. A banker, their job is to get deposits and give loans so they can make their commission, and they can make a couple $100,000 as an employee. Like if we just understand this stuff, and I think it's like, I had to go through this mourning of like, oh, no one cares in the healthcare system at all. Like no one cares at all. And like, it's like kind of like this, oh, like I have to have this responsibility as an owner. Otherwise, like it's just randomly happening to me.
You and your father get through all this, you sell the business, and do you think that made you guys stronger? You're a good team getting through it and doing the work to I mean, you said you're
Him
great
and I,
friends now.
it's I love my dad. He was very there was never ever a question of loyalty to
Yeah.
me. Like it was just
You
always
just
like, this is family. This is family. And like, my dad went through a bunch of personal stuff. I mean, he like, and I wouldn't wish some of the stuff that he's gone through on anybody. And so like, I always understood emotionally, like he was dealing with stuff from a handicap perspective. Not, he's not handicapped, but
no.
like he had a handicap for like just how much stuff he was going through. And so like, he was just do what's right for him first. And then he was very much, uh, in the Bo Burlingham camp of like, I mean, he went through years of depression. I mean, years, no purpose, sitting on the pontoon in the middle of the afternoon. I mean, he was 53 when we sold.
So this is after the exit. He
Yeah,
hits that
he's
decision.
63 now, and he's now having a shit ton of fun. He's like, so
He's
he's
back in the
now,
game again, isn't he? He's got a
yeah,
business
he's
again now, and he's
yeah,
got some.
him and
Yeah,
I found, so through my podcast and a lot of the stuff that I do, he found this company that, and Roger Roundy was just on my podcast. They do tax mitigation, and they're not CPAs, but they are the most, like, I've spent 10 years interviewing billionaire family offices and you name it. And this guy and his team legally can mitigate people's tax. Anybody paying over 100 grand can get most of it wiped out. And my dad is now just like, I mean, you can only imagine we paid 52% in taxes on an 8-figure sale. He's
so,
pretty passionate. He's paid for his dues of roads and parks. And so like, he's just trying to go out there and help people. And he's just having fun going back to like,
yeah,
he goes, I don't want any employees. I don't want any inventory. I want to jump on and talk to my friends who also own businesses. And so, yeah, it's going back to like, what brings you joy? And I think this whole notion of retirement and sitting on the beach is ridiculous,
yeah,
especially as entrepreneurs who are adrenaline junkies.
yeah. It's 10 days on the beach, and I've had enough already. So
I think I'm like
cool,
4. Like I can do 4, like Wednesday to Sunday, but it's like I need to be reading and like running and like otherwise
big
I'm
stuff.
just like, yeah, yeah.
Cool. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people get hold of you if they want to reach out to you? What's the best place?
RyanTansom.com. Yeah,
Cool.
my website,
LinkedIn.
RyanTansom.com, LinkedIn, and but all my that website will have all the links to the new podcast that comes out and the YouTube channel and all that stuff.